All right, so my name is James Xu, and I'm here to basically give you my perspective on a career in tech, or my career in tech, and also what I learned along the way, and try to make some actionable suggestions to everybody here in the room. Just a really quick thing about who I am. I actually have quite a multicultural background. I was originally born in Taiwan. I moved to Canada when I was 7, but for the last 13 years, I've been in mainland China, the last 6 years in Shanghai. There's a lot going on there, but we'll talk about my story and why I actually moved countries and continents to get here. I have a tech background, so I went to school in UBC, got my computer science degree in Vancouver. That's where I grew up. Recently, I received my global EMBA from SEEBS here in Shanghai. Just to say a little bit more about my career background, I started off as a software engineer because basically writing code. And over the years, I moved into project management and then product management. So for those of you who don't know, project manager manages the project. So a project typically has a timeline, it has resources, it has a team. So you're not managing the people, you're managing the project. This is what I did after becoming a software engineer. A product manager is a little different. So everything that we see in the world is kind of like a product. So for example, everybody uses WeChat, right? If you use WeChat, there was a product manager that decided what is the next version of the product going to have. Or if you're driving a car, somebody had to decide the price, the color, the features, what the next version is going to be. So this is something that I really got into in software. I really wanted to be a product manager. And eventually I got there, but I had to move to China to become that. So I'll talk about my story there as well. And in recent years, I actually became an entrepreneur. So I left the corporate world and I moved into the world of startups. I actually co-founded 2 startups, built a live streaming startup from 0 to 1, and raised money and built a team. So that was where I learned a lot more about what leadership actually means. And in recent years, I actually moved into freelancing. So some of you have seen maybe my videos on social media. I also am a trainer, I'm a consultant, and I'm also an executive coach. So the 2 areas that I really specialize in for all of this is basically business skills. So things like communications, things like how to influence your boss to give you what you want, how to communicate with other people in a multicultural environment, which is a lot of my background. The other one is career development. So I'm really passionate in helping people find the best way forward in their careers, which is also why I'm here today to volunteer with this talk. So this is what we're going to do today. So I'm going to tell you all the hard lessons that I learned the hard way. It took me a lot of struggle, a lot of challenges, a lot of mistakes to actually get to where I am today. But the good thing for you, because you're here, is that hopefully I'm going to give you things that you can apply the easy way. You can just take my lessons and go with it. By the way, can I have a show of hands? Who's in the tech or IT industry? Okay, so minority of people, which is great because I actually designed this talk to be basically relevant no matter what industry you're in. So you don't have to be in tech. I think these are general career mistakes that I made that I think you could benefit from in any industry. So let's go. Learning number 1. This is something that I really strongly believe in, which is called finding your edge or finding your advantage. And what I mean by this is that in your career, you have to play the right game. You have to play the right game, and you have to avoid the wrong game. So why am I calling everyone's career or title a game? Because a game has winning, it has losing, it has goals, it has objectives. So the very first thing you have to think about in your career is what game are you playing? For example, when I was in Canada, the very first job I had was being a software engineer. And I was thinking, that's not really a game I want to play after a while because 1, I'm not the best coder, I'm not the best at writing code, and 2, I realized that my passion was actually in helping build something together as a team. But if you're a software engineer, unless you're a big boss, you're basically just working by yourself. So I realized very early on, I really wanted to play the game of becoming a product manager because I talked to people who are product managers and they said, this is what I do. I'm right here, I'm a software engineer. I want to move into the game of product manager. The only problem is I don't know how to get there. So I talked to a whole bunch of product managers and they said, one person told me, James, how did I become a product manager? I went and got an MBA. And then I became a product manager. Well, I don't have time. I don't have the money for that. And then another person told me I was first a designer. Then I moved into product manager. Everybody gave me a different answer. So I never found a way to easily move in my company to become a PM. But you know what I did is I thought, okay, well, I can't be a product manager right away, but I can be a project manager. Remember how I mentioned that a project manager is someone who manages the timeline? It's much easier to move into project management. So in my company in Canada, that's what I did. I moved into project management because I figured out that even though I'm right here as an engineer, I want to be a product manager, but to get along the way, I can still pick up some skills. I can still do something. So I'll never forget this. Like one day I was working in my big company in Canada. My boss called me into his office and he said, James, I'm quitting. He's quitting. He said, I'm going to go build a startup. Do you want to join me? I was already a project manager, but he's like, do you want to join me as a project manager in my startup? And I'm young, right? So the first thing I thought was, that's too risky. What if I join the startup and the startup fails and I have no job? What the hell, right? Job security. But then I really went home and I thought about it. And I thought that what I realized is that I can pick up so many things in the smaller environment because in the startup, even if I'm just a project manager, I am working with the engineering team, I'm working with the QA, I'm working with sales, marketing, I'm working with the CEO because it's a small company, I'm working with my boss who is one of the VPs. So this is a way for me to get a stepping stone to play in the game that I want to play. So I joined the startup, I learned a lot. I was there for about a year or two. And then guess what happens is I figured out my strength is in working as a team, and that's what I want to do as a product manager. So I started to play to my strengths, and I said to myself, I don't want to be coding. I don't want to be a software engineer. I want to be a product manager. That's my passion. But here's the thing, right? That's my thesis. My belief is that I wanted to be a PM. But I thought I could just be a PM in Canada. But I couldn't find a job in Canada to be a PM. I couldn't find a job in the US. One of my friends that I knew in China, she actually introduced me to Yahoo in Beijing. They're like, we need to hire someone who's a multicultural Western person who can speak Mandarin to join us in Yahoo Beijing. So you have to remember, this is like 2011. There was no Zoom. So I don't know what my interviewer looked like. I just did like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 phone interviews. And they gave me the job over the phone. I didn't know what my hiring manager looked like. They said, James, do you want the job? You have to come to Beijing. You can be a product manager. So this is a case of, I want to be a product manager, but I have to be flexible in how I do it. I have to actually travel to China. And so that's what I did. I took the job, I accepted the job, and then I booked a one-way ticket to China. That was 13 years ago, and now I'm still here. I think the real lesson here, the takeaway here is that, first of all, you have to really understand yourself. What are your strengths and what do you want to do? This is obvious, right? But you have to sit down with a pen and paper and just write out, what do you think you're good at? Where do you want to go? What game do you want to play? If you don't know what game you're playing, no one's going to help you. And then the other thing is you have to have a point of view. For me, it was like, I want to be a product manager. What do you want to be? It doesn't matter what industry, it doesn't matter what job. You have to have goals for yourself because, again, no one is going to set those goals for you. All right, learning number 2. I'm really big on analogies. I think leadership is kind of like a muscle. So if I want to get stronger in my biceps or whatever, I have to go to the gym. I have to stress my bicep. I have to tire myself. It has to be uncomfortable. And then I will recover. I will grow. The bicep will get bigger. And then guess what happens? The next time I want to get even bigger biceps, I don't have big biceps. I'm just using it as an analogy. I have to go back to the gym. Guess what? It's always going to be uncomfortable. Leading is always going to be uncomfortable. If you have a leader that tells you, I'm so comfortable being a leader, I don't think they're telling the truth. That's what I'm saying. It never gets easier. So leading is about being uncomfortable, at least for me, because I am not a natural born leader. But this is where I actually have to talk about my philosophy on leadership, right? Because some people are natural born leaders, and the only thing they want to do is lead. But I told you that the game that I want to play is I want to build something. I want to build something with a team. I want to build something with impact. And I actually think of leading as a way to do that. Because there's nothing big you can do in a company that can be done by yourself. Unless you're, I mean, even Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, they have to hire people. They have to have a team. So for me, it's just a byproduct. When I was in the corporate roles, when I was raising money and building a startup, we started with 2 people. We ended up with about 30 people. That to me was just the price of building for impact. I didn't care about actually managing people. That's what I had to do. Managing people and leading people was something that was a tool for me to get there. So again, it just has to be, you have to be very clear with yourself, like what do you actually want to get out of your game, right? Maybe for you, leading is the goal. For me, it's always been a byproduct of the real goal that I want, which is creating the impact. Other thing this is really important. When I was a project manager, I managed a project. I didn't manage people. When I was a junior product manager, I was managing the product. I was not managing people. I have to use soft authority. I have to use soft skills to get people to do what I want. I'm not their manager. I'm not their boss. So this is basically a real lesson that I learned, is that you have to learn to lead without having a title. It doesn't matter if you're a manager of somebody. You can get people to do things for you, to help you. You can help them out. This is where influence comes into play. So everybody here in the room, if you want to lead, I know it sounds like a cliche, but you need to just do it. It's a mindset. Just because you have a title doesn't mean you're a good leader. Just because you don't have a title doesn't mean that you can't be a leader. The takeaway here is I talk about growing your leadership like a muscle, right? So hopefully for most of you, you do want to grow. So do try to optimize your career for playing the right games and really try to find out the why. Because I'm going to tell you, when you manage people, when they're telling you about their problems, sometimes it can be really hard, right? We all have hard challenges in our lives. If you do not have the why, or why I'm doing this, it's going to be very hard to continue in your role. Okay, number 3, this is something that product managers also do a lot, which is experiments. So this is where I have to say that for me, I always thought of my career as kind of an experiment, because one thing you have to understand, where I think for 99.9% of us, your career is not life or death. There's no game over. So when I failed in my first startup, I created a second startup. When I failed in one job, when I pissed off my manager, I went to another job. So, or transferred to another team. I think there's actually a lot of places where we just don't challenge ourselves enough. And I'm going to go back to the muscle analogy. If you have never invested $1, you're not going to one day invest $100,000. You have to basically take on more and more risk. So for me back in Canada, it was the young James who said, I want to join a startup. I wasn't even the founder. I thought it was so risky just to join the startup, just to be an employee. But after you do that, you realize it's okay. You move on to the next challenge. Even before I knew there was a term for this, it's called negative visualization. I always ask myself in my career, what's the worst that could happen? This is actually very important. So we always try to imagine the best case. You have to imagine the worst case. So whenever I had to imagine, what happens if I go to the startup and it fails? No problem. I find another job, right? What happens if I move to China and I suck and I can't be a product manager? It's okay. I can book a flight back to Canada. So the only thing in your career really, unless it's life or death and you're a doctor, that's another story, is you figure out what's the opportunity cost. The real cost is just, if I'm doing this, I'm not doing that. So I actually encourage everybody, no matter where you are in your careers, is just to take more challenges, take on more challenges, but try to do it in a safe way. So that's what I mean by find your safe experimentation space. You have to give yourself a little bit of a challenge every time. And I also want to say that for most of us, like, our lives are very compartmentalized. So you can find challenges in some part of your life just to trigger the part of you that wants to have some sort of stimulus. So maybe you don't want to challenge yourself at work right now because you need the job, right? So you can challenge yourself with rock climbing. And then you need to basically develop this idea of like trying to take on some hard things, and eventually you'll be able to apply it to your career. We have to talk about my views on the future. And actually, I'm pretty much a techno optimist. And by that, I mean, tech is very much driven by trends. Everybody right now is talking about scared about AI or generative AI, right? Everybody's talking about it. A few years ago, everybody was talking about blockchain, cryptocurrency. A few years ago, before that, everyone was talking about big data. Do you remember that? And machine learning. ABCD. And just every time there's a trend. But I think in the tech industry, the really interesting thing is that you have to find a way to form, it goes with what I said about forming your own thesis. You have to form your own conclusions. So try to think for yourself. Don't just follow the crowd, because if you go for the average thought, you will always be average. So what's the one thing that you can find that is against what everybody else is thinking? Maybe you have some sort of secret thing. This is like the same in investing in life. Can you find something where you actually believe something that majority of the world does not believe? Try to find out what that is and try to figure out how to incorporate that into your career. Basically, the takeaway is try to be optimistic. This is another thing I'll say. Last thing I'll say about technology is that technology is moving so quickly so that at any point in time, it always feels like the technology is really crap until one day it's not. Like if you look at ChatGPT, it improved by leaps and bounds in the last 2 or 3 years. And also there's this thing called the unintended consequence of technology, which means that right now you think the use case is just some stupid thing like a chatbot, but in the future it will be used for smarter and more intelligent things. Technology always has an application that goes beyond what we initially built it for. So never underestimate technology, be optimistic about the future, and it does not matter what industry you're in. I highly encourage you to just learn something new. If you don't know enough about Gen AI, please try to play with it once a week. Try to set up something where you can learn from videos and things like that. That is pretty much it. That's my talk. Here are my socials if you want to follow me on whatever, and that's kind of what I do. So I think that is my time. Thank you.